Bertrand Russell was a mathematician and philosopher born in 1872 that died in 1970. Russell grew up a relatively unhappy life, despite being rich. He stated in an autobiography that he often contemplated suicide in his youth, and that nature and books, and later, mathematics, saved him from complete despondency. Russell studied mathematics in Trinity College at Cambridge. During this time in college, he began to reject his past belief of Christianity and became an atheist. Russell lived through World War I and became a lecturer at Trinity College, who studied math, politics, and philosophy. There, he wrote The Principles of Mathematics, which became a largely successful part of Russell's career. In that book, Russell dives deep into the nature of logic, where Russell dove into the philosophy of mathematics through logicism. After World War I had ended, Russell dove deep into philosophy and wrote many impactful philosophical books, such as The Conquest of Happiness. The Conquest of Happiness is one of the most successful and popular books of happiness of all time. Russell split The Conquest of Happiness into two main segments, Causes of Unhappiness and Causes of Happiness. He goes chapter by chapter stating different reasons, explaining each one. In the first section, he starts with the causes of unhappiness. First is Byronic unhappiness. Russell begins this section on causes of unhappiness by stating that Byronic individuals are truly unhappy, but also proud of their unhappiness, which they attribute to the nature of the universe and consider to be the only rational attitude for an enlightened man. Here, he states that no engagement with life leads to unhappiness, and that the best treatment is to engage with life and not accept unhappiness. He states that anything is better than being vanity, which he means as being worthless, and to become anything, a laborer, a pirate, or even a king. The next chapter is called Competition, where Bertrand Russell stated this: "The treadmill that people run on doesn't take them anywhere. These runners are people who do well, earn a decent income, people who could, if they chose, work less or work on something that truly excites them. But deviating from their existing path would be embarrassing, like deserting the army in the face of an enemy. Though, if you ask what is the greater good for their work, they're unable to respond, or they'll articulate a phrase they heard on TV or read in a textbook." He also said, "While in non-business professions there is a desire to compete and win, what's respected is not success alone but excellence in the job. For example, a scientist may be wealthy or poor, but her respect is not tied to her income. And no one would be surprised to find a famous artist in poverty. In fact, poverty is an honor, but for the businessman, there is no success beyond the competitive struggle to get rich." Additionally, he said, "But life's primary aim cannot be competition. It's too grim, too much about desire and tension, to create a life worth living for more than a few decades. Soon it produces nervous fatigue, a desire to escape, and a need for pleasures as aggressive as work itself. True relaxation becomes impossible. The competitive focus poisons not only work but leisure too. Leisure that was once calm and refreshing becomes dull and silly. This sort of life results in drugs and eventual collapse. The only way to cure it is by seeking sensible and quiet pleasures within a balanced life." In Bertrand Russell's next section, he talks about boredom and excitement. Russell believed that boredom is an enriching experience. He states we are less bored than our ancestors were, but we are more afraid of boredom. We have come to know, or rather to believe, that boredom is not a part of the natural lot of man, but can be avoided by sufficiently vigorous pursuits of excitement. By stating this, he helps us understand that boredom is necessary to feel excitement, that if we were excited all the time and always winning, the effects of excitement would lessen, and it wouldn't feel all that exciting. But when we are bored, it is time to enrich ourselves and to think critically. And when excitement comes, it is much more powerful and present than it would feel if we were already excited. Russell uses an example of a farmer who plants their crops in the spring. The farmer will feel bored during the summer while his crops grow, but by the end of the summer, when fall approaches, the farmer will harvest his crops and gain excitement. If the farmer didn't experience boredom over the summer and was always harvesting crops, the farmer would not feel the value and get excited about his harvest in the fall. But because the farmer was bored and had time to contemplate, his experience of harvesting his hard work was incredibly enriching and exciting. In the next section, Russell talks about fatigue. He states, "In a noisy environment such as an industrial city, there is a constant cacophony of noise and men who are fatigued from the subconscious effort in focusing on that which matters. We must ignore much that assails all of our senses. But ignoring is not passive or simple, but requires recognizing it and assessing each of the 1,000 things an hour as unimportant. The crowded environment is also stressful. As the natural instinct of man, as with any other animal, it is of any stranger of his species as a friendly or hostile, and much of it is in the same way as each person we encounter during a busy rush hour must be recognized and identified before he can be ignored. Commuting leaves a person with frayed nerves and a tendency to view the human race as a nuisance. Additionally, Russell talks about how mental exhaustion and anxiety can lead to stress, but he states, a great many worries can be diminished by realizing that the unimportance of the matter which is causing the anxiety. In the last section of his part of unhappiness, Russell talks about envy. Envy is a feeling of discontented or resentful longing aroused by someone else's possessions, qualities, or luck. Russell states that envy undermines happiness. It generates pain from what others possesses, instead of pleasure from one's own possessions, and might even motivate measures to deprive others of their perceived advantages. Unrestrained envy can destroy excellence. Instead, Russell preaches admiration instead of envy. He states that with the wise man, what he does not cease to be enjoyable because someone else has something else. If you see someone you're inferior, better rewarded than yourself, your best strategy is to ignore it and enjoy what you have. Indeed, the happiness that you then possess will make you the object of envy. After all, what is more enviable than happiness? Later, in the second half of the Conquest of Happiness, Russell begins to talk about the ways one can be happy. In this section, called The Causes for Happiness, the first example Russell highlights is zest. Russell states that one of the best ways to live life being generally happy is to live life with zest. Russell states that to have zest, you have to experience many new things and actively seek those. If not, you will reach boredom, which we learned earlier is a cause for unhappiness. Russell says, adventurous men enjoy shipwrecks, mutinies, earthquakes, conflagrations, and all kinds of unpleasant experiences, provided they do not go far to impair health. They say to themselves, in an earthquake, for example, so that is what an earthquake is like, and it gives them pleasure to have their knowledge of the world increased by this new item. Another cause of happiness, Russell states, is affection. Russell says affection is crucial towards a happy life. To feel being loved and to love someone else unconditionally, without worry, is an easy trip towards happiness. Early in Russell's life, he stated, love is wise, hatred is foolish. This philosophy rings true in Russell in all of his writing, as Russell examines that if you love all people, and especially your significant others unconditionally, it will bring you happiness. In the next section, he talks about family. Russell states that affection of parents for children and of children for parents is capable of being one of the greatest sources of happiness. But in fact, as the present day, the relations of parents and children are, in 9 cases out of 10, a source of unhappiness to both parties, and in 99 cases out of 100, a source of unhappiness to at least one of the two parties. Russell states that family and affection can be a huge part of being happy, but right now, for the most people, it is not. Russell admits that in this section, family is a far greater issue than what can be established in the Conquest of Happiness alone, although he mentions several issues such as obedience and punishment in families. For this section, he talks about work. Russell states that on work that provide work is not excessive in amount, even the dullest work is to most people less painful than idleness. Additionally, when explaining the benefits of work, he says to begin with, it fills a good many hours of the day without the need of deciding what one shall do. Most people, when they are left free to fill their own time according to their choice, are lost to think of anything sufficiently pleasant to be worth doing. Russell states this to say that work is good for you, and for most people it provides routine and something to keep individuals going, as they are not sufficient at coordinating their free time positively. For the remaining of the book, Russell talks about the importance of keeping busy with small tasks, effort, and resignation. He states that the importance of always having something to work on and keep busy with it will help with main anxieties. Additionally, he talks about how effort can be a double-edged sword, as sometimes loads of effort yields good results and excitement, but sometimes you can pour loads of effort into something and have a tremendously degrading failure, which is why sometimes the ability to resign is important. In the final chapter, called The Happy Man, Russell states that certain things are indispensable to the happiness of most men, but these are simple things: food and shelter, health, love, successful work, and respect to one's own herd. He additionally states, the happy man is a man who lives objectively, who has free affections and his wide interests, who secures his happiness through these interests and affections and through the fact that they, in turn, may make him an object of interest and affection to many others. And finally, at the end of the book, Russell says, the happy man is the man who does not suffer from either of these failures or unity, whose personality is neither divided against itself nor pitted against the world. Such a man feels himself a citizen of the universe, enjoying freely the spectacle that it offers and joys that it affords, untroubled by the thought of death, because he feels himself not really separate from those who will come after him. It is in such profound instinctive union with the stream of life that the greatest joy is to be found.